Archie gazed out the window of the moving car, her eyes wide with wonder and a hint of apprehension. The bustling streets of Delhi were a far cry from the serene mountains of Uttarakhand, where she had spent her entire childhood surrounded by nature's tranquility. She was nervous and excited all at once, her heart pounding with the thrill of the unknown and the fear of leaving behind everything familiar. Delhi meant college, new friends, and a whole new life. It was a chance to reinvent herself, to explore new opportunities, and to chase her dreams in a city that never slept. Her parents had found a small but cozy flat in a quiet neighborhood. It was a modest place, but it had a warmth that made it feel like home. It wasn't much, but it was home. The walls were bare, and the furniture was sparse, but it was a blank canvas waiting to be filled with new memories. As her parents unpacked boxes, Archie explored the flat, her footsteps echoing in the empty rooms. Each corner held the promise of a new beginning. The flat felt old, filled with the whispers of past occupants. The creaky floors and vintage decor told stories of lives lived and moments cherished. In a dusty corner of the spare room, she spotted it, a small, unassuming object that seemed out of place in the otherwise tidy room. A rotting cardboard box tucked away behind stacks of old newspapers. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years, forgotten by time. Curiosity bubbled inside her. What could be hidden inside? She felt a strange connection to the box, as if it held the key to a mystery waiting to be unraveled. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, she carefully opened the box, her fingers trembling slightly. What she found inside would change her life forever. Inside were old photographs and letters, remnants of a bygone era. Each item told a story, a piece of a puzzle that Archie was eager to solve. She picked up a letter and began to read, her eyes scanning the faded ink. The words spoke of love, loss, and dreams that had once been. Archie smiled, feeling a sense of discovery and connection. This new city, this new start, was already beginning to reveal its secrets. As the sun set over the city skyline, Archie felt a renewed sense of hope. Delhi was not just a place, it was a promise of endless possibilities. The cardboard box creaked as Archie lifted its lid. The musty scent of time filled her nostrils. Inside, nestled in faded velvet lining, lay a camera. It was old, vintage, with a worn leather strap and tarnished silver accents.
A shiver ran down my spine as I touched its cold surface. It was beautiful, almost hauntingly so.
A name was etched on the bottom plate. Clicker. Archie had always loved photography. This camera, despite its age, called to her. She imagined the stories it could tell, the moments it had captured. Determined to bring it back to life, she carefully packed it away, a plan forming in her mind. Archie spent the next day cleaning Clicker. She had found it in her grandmother's attic, covered in layers of dust and cobwebs. The camera had a certain charm, a nostalgic allure that drew her in. She gently wiped away the dust, revealing its antique beauty. The brass and leather exterior gleamed under the sunlight, each detail telling a story of a bygone era. To her surprise, the camera seemed to function perfectly. The dials turned smoothly, and the shutter clicked with a satisfying sound. It was as if the camera had been waiting for someone to bring it back to life. She bought film from a quaint shop downtown, the owner eyeing her curiously. The shop was filled with vintage items, each with its own history. The owner, an elderly man with a twinkle in his eye, seemed to know the story behind every item.
An antique like this? It captures more than just images, he'd said, his voice raspy. His words lingered in her mind, adding a layer of mystery to the camera.
Archie dismissed his words as eccentricity. She was more interested in the camera's functionality than any mystical properties it might possess. Back home, she felt an inexplicable pull towards the camera. It was as if Clicker had a story to tell, a story that only she could uncover. It was as if Clicker had a life of its own. The lens seemed to gleam with a mysterious light, inviting her to explore the world through its eyes. She started with familiar sights: her building, the bustling street market, a stray dog basking in the afternoon sun. Each click of the shutter felt like a step back in time, capturing moments that would otherwise be lost. Then her lens landed on her neighbor, Mrs. Kaushik. The elderly woman had always been a figure of intrigue, with her serene demeanor and gentle smile. The old lady sat on her balcony, watering her plants. The scene was peaceful, almost timeless, as if it belonged to a different era. Ashi snapped a picture, drawn to the serenity on Mrs. Kaushik's face. The camera seemed to capture not just the image, but the essence of the moment. It was then that Ashi began to understand the true allure of Clicker. It wasn't just a camera, it was a portal to the past, a way to preserve the beauty of fleeting moments. Days later, Ashi collected the developed photographs. She had been eagerly waiting for them, hoping to relive the memories captured during her recent trip. The anticipation had been building up, and she could hardly contain her excitement as she picked up the stack of photos from the counter. She eagerly flipped through them, her heart pounding with anticipation. Each photo brought back a flood of memories, and she couldn't help but smile at the familiar faces and places. The joy of seeing her friends and family, the beautiful landscapes, and the candid moments made her heart swell with happiness. The familiar scenes sparked joy, but then she froze. Her smile faded, replaced by a look of confusion and fear. Something was not right. She flipped back to the photo that had caught her attention, her hands trembling slightly. In the background of Mrs. Kaushik's photo stood a figure. It was faint, almost blending into the shadows, but unmistakably there. Ashi's mind raced as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Tall, shadowy, with a wide, eerie grin that sent chills down her spine. The figure seemed to be watching, almost as if it knew it was being photographed. The grin was unsettling, a stark contrast to the joyful moments captured in the photo.
It was not Mrs. Kaushik's shadow. The figure stood apart, distinct and separate from her. It was as if it had a presence of its own, independent of the scene it was in. It stood apart, as if posing for the camera. The realization sent a wave of fear through Ashi. Who or what could it be? Why was it in her photos?
A shiver ran down Ashi's spine. She felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. The room seemed to close in around her as she stared at the photo, unable to look away. She flipped through the other photos. Her hands moved quickly, almost frantically, as she searched for more clues. Each photo she looked at seemed to confirm her worst fears. The smiling shadow was in every single one. No matter where the photo was taken, the figure was there, lurking in the background. It was as if it had been following her, watching her every move, lurking in the background, always smiling that unsettling smile. The grin seemed to grow wider with each photo, as if it was mocking her fear. The more she looked, the more terrified she became. A knot of fear tightened in her stomach. Had she imagined it? Was her mind playing tricks on her? She tried to rationalize what she was seeing, but the fear was too real. Was it a trick of the light? Could it be a flaw in the film? She wanted to believe it was something explainable, something mundane. But deep down, she knew there was something more to it. Or was it something far more sinister? The thought sent a chill through her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The smiling shadow had left its mark, and Ashi knew her life would never be the same again. Sleep became elusive. Ashi was plagued by nightmares.
The smiling shadow haunted my waking hours too. I would catch glimpses of it at the edge of my vision, lurking in the shadows of my room.
Strange whispers followed her, indecipherable murmurs that seemed to slither from the walls, pronouncements in an unknown tongue.
I felt a constant chilling presence, as if something was watching me, toying with me.
Her parents dismissed her concerns.
It's the stress of a new city.
Her mother had said, her voice laced with concern. But Ashi knew better. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and it was all connected to Clicker.
I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling that the smiling shadow was somehow connected to Mrs. Kaushik.
One evening, armed with the photograph, Ashi gathered the courage to visit her neighbor.
The camera, it steals souls. The shadow, it's always smiling, feeding off the energy of its victims.
Mrs. Kaushik's wrinkled face paled as she saw the photo. Before Ashi could probe further, Mrs. Kaushik clutched her arm, her grip surprisingly strong.
Get rid of the camera, child, before it claims you too.
That night, a fierce storm raged outside. Thunder roared and lightning split the sky. Ashi tossed and turned in her bed, her mind racing. Mrs. Kaushik's warning echoed in her ears.
I can't stop thinking about what she said.
Suddenly, her bedroom door creaked open. The smiling shadow stood there, grinning menacingly. It moved towards her, its form becoming clearer, more solid with each passing second. Terror choked Ashi's voice. She scrambled back, her heart pounding against her ribs.
I have to get away to escape this darkness.
The next morning, Ashi was gone. Her parents searched frantically, their hearts heavy with dread. The room was empty, save for Clicker, lying on the floor, its lens reflecting a distorted image of the room.
Ashi, where are you? Please come back.
The police investigation yielded nothing. Ashi had vanished without a trace. Her parents were left devastated, clinging to the hope that their daughter was still out there, somewhere. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The case went cold. Ashi's disappearance remained a mystery. A chilling tale whispered amongst the neighbors.
We will never stop looking for you, Ashi.
Months later, Ashi's younger brother was going through her belongings. He stumbled upon a box filled with developed photographs. His eyes widened in horror.
No way, this can't be real.
In one photo, standing amidst a group of Ashi's college friends, was Ashi. But her image was different. She appeared translucent, ghostly, a faint outline of her former self. And behind her, clear as day, stood the smiling shadow, its grin wider than ever.
What does this mean? What happened to you, Ashi?